Okay, let's just make the page look nicer. And I'm gonna create a button for adding new student for next video that we are going to work on. So go back to Visual Studio and then go here to the top, add div for the class, use the class container. Okay, make sure this is at the bottom, I mean engulf the whole table HTML. Okay, now we come back here. Let's just add div, another one, and then you can show some text here. But before that, let me add column. So I need to show two items. One is just the name of the table that now I'm showing, and another section where I'm gonna show a button says add a new student. So I'm gonna use class again, column. I'm gonna split the row into two columns equally. And then here I'm gonna write student list, and probably I'm gonna use also bootstrap text primary. And then we need to add another column. Okay, and then I'm gonna add hyperlink which says add new student. But of course now I need to refer to the correct action and controller. So you can use ASP tag helper. So I'm gonna specify controller, which is student, and later I'm going to create an action for this, which is called add student. Okay, and class is btn primary. So let's take a look what changes has happened to my table, to my view. I think now it looks better, but I need this to go to the right section. Now, if you are using a new Bootstrap version, here because I'm using old Bootstrap version when I created this system, so you can use text end if you have on your site. But here, because again I'm using an old version of Bootstrap, so I don't have this option available. If you have, just use text end, or I'm gonna use for now text right, just to ensure that this button is showing at the end of the row or on the right hand side. Okay, so again I was showing only the view. So here inside the class you need to add text right, or if you are using, again as I said, okay, you come here, and then if you are using a new version of Bootstrap, you can just type text end. But since I'm using an old version of Bootstrap, then I don't have this option. I have to go with text dash right. Now, if I go back into my page, of course, you need to refresh. I already refreshed earlier. Then you have add new student here. Of course, if you click, a problem is going to show because I don't have this controller or this action and corresponding view implemented yet. Okay, let's go and see how we can create a new view. This view would be responsible to insert data into the database. So we have seen how we can retrieve data from a database using Entity Framework, how we can show the data inside our view. And now the next step, I'm going to show you how you can insert data from the view to the database. So I need to create a new action and corresponding view to add a new student. So let's see how we can do that together. So go back to Visual Studio and then go to the student controller, and I'm going to create an action, public my action result, and then add student, okay, and return view for this one, okay, as simple as that. Then you go to student here and create a new view. Again, we follow same name of our action, add student, and now here I need to create my view, okay. Now, since what type of model I'm going to retrieve or get back from this view is of type student, right? Because I'm going to create an object of student and then send back to the database. Unlike show student, where we have shown a list of students, here just we're going to add a single student inside this form. So the model is going to be just student. You're going to see later why I need to specify the model, okay? So don't be in rush. And same, we need to specify using namespace, attendance system, and then attend sysdb. So everything is just wonderful. Now I'm going to create div and specify class as border. Just I'm going to have a box to include all the controller inside. And let me just specify also, I'm going to have padding 3. Then I have another div, going to be class, let's say row. And I'm going just to show some text, add new student. And then let me add just horizontal line. And now we come to the section where I need to add my controllers or my components to let the user insert or key in information about the student. So I'm gonna have first div and then label. I need label to show what this section or what this input is about. Now here the fun comes in. Since now I have specified the model, so I can use the tag helper. So I can say this label for what? You see how easy? And then I specify that this label for the first name. Okay. That means the label, .NET is going to create this label, and the label name is first name for this. So you don't need to specify anything here. It's gonna just follow the name of the field, okay, for which this label is created. And now we come to input. We need to enable the user to insert data. So again, ASP4 first name. Okay, and then we specify class is form control. And then here just I'm gonna leave some, let's say, margin between this div and the next one. So I'm gonna write margin for the bottom, let's say 3. And then just copy this and create it a few times for the other field. Okay, so we have first name, last name. We have an address here. Now I need the last one. There are two ways, because I need to have the faculty ID. The faculty ID is compulsory, is non-null, is marked as non-null inside my database. So I have to provide information about this. Okay, if I go to the student, so I have faculty ID, and this one is non-null. So if we check faculty student, then we need to specify the faculty ID as I said earlier, and this one has to be provided. Okay, it has to be provided. So now what we need to do, I need to include information about the faculty ID. So just for the sake of simplicity, I'm not going to provide combo box and etc. So I'm going to just have faculty ID for now. Okay, this one. So there are two ways. Either you can show it here saying, okay, this is for faculty ID, and the input, let's say just I'm going to provide value for it by default, which is 1. Of course, this is not correct way. Okay, because we don't show the ID to the user. The user doesn't know what is the corresponding ID for a certain faculty name. But just now, I'm not going to go into details. This is one way. Let's say just I'm going to provide this to the user, and I can mark it as read only. Let's say if I don't want him to mess up with this for now. Or another way, you can just add an input. You can just add an input, and then you say that this is for let's say this is for faculty ID, and it's hidden, and the value is 1. Okay, so either you follow this to ensure that the value will be given to the object of type student, or you can do this. So I'm going to leave this for now. Let's take a look how our system now, or how our view looks like. Let me just refresh. And now I click add a new student, and you see here I got my form. Right? It looks nice, but there's no horizontal line. Let's check and add also buttons for submit, and going back to the list. Yeah, because here I didn't specify a column. Let's just go with this. Maybe I don't want to specify anything, and it worked perfectly. Okay, so now my view looks nicer. So I have here add new student, horizontal line, then the list of the fields. And notice how the label is already shown the correct. If you click actually on the label, you see how nice it's gonna send the focus into the corresponding input. This is all because of the tag helpers I have added, ASP4. Okay, now let's go back and see how we can, we need to insert the buttons. So we can come here, we need to create button, and the type is submit. And then let's say the class is btn primary, and we need to specify the ASP action and controller, but actually I forgot to add form here. So this should be inside form. And then the method is going to be post. We're going to see that soon. And we need to specify ASP action and controller. You can come here and type ASP controller is student, and ASP action is add student, right? But this is optional in this case because .NET is going to follow the convention. Since you are add inside the view add student, so he's going to try to locate inside the controller student for an action name called add student. And the post, the method should be post. So up to you. This is optional if you like to add. If not, it's up to you. Or maybe you would like to navigate to different controller and different action, then in this case it's must. You have to specify the controller name and action. But in our case, actually, it's going to follow the default names. So this is optional in our case. And here we don't need, of course, specify anything. Let's just give name. So add new or add student. And then I'm going to add another button, hyperlink, where I'm gonna just give a link to go back to the list of student. But of course now I need to specify the controller student, and ASP action is show students, right? The one we worked on earlier. And the class is going to be btn secondary. Let's take a look into our system. Refresh. Okay, nice. Now if you click go back, it should send us back to show students. Then we can click again add student. Okay. Now we need to program this one, right? Because now this add student is showing us the add student view. I mean, when we click on this button, it's showing us this one, add student. But now we need to create another action to handle the post method. So let's go back to Visual Studio. I'm going to show you what does that mean. So if you go back to Visual Studio and go to the controller, so by default, we have this action. By default, this action is get method. So this is get. If you remember, there are different types of actions. We have get, we have post, and etc. We have delete and so on. So for this one, by default, since we didn't specify inside C#, so this is get. And we need another one to handle post method, because inside the form we stated that we need to have a post method for this one, right? So we're gonna have another one for post. So we write I public I action result add student, and since this one is gonna retrieve what from the view, as we said, we are going to get an object of type student, so we can specify here we're gonna actually get student. And now we need to make sure that this is HTTP post. So you can specify HTTP post. Okay. And now we are, let's say just here, return view for now. I don't like to see the error message. And you may also add validate anti-forgery token. So you can check onto validate anti-forgery token. So maybe later we explain what this is about, but just to ensure that there's no cross request coming to the website or to our application. And we are ready now to go. So now what we need to do is actually quite simple. Again, we need to open or establish DB context, and then we need to say DB students.add, and then we push student. Now, in order to have these changes taken effect, right, we need to write DB save changes. In this case, we're not just how, because we can add multiple entries, but then you need to call save changes to push those entries, like in our case, the new student, into the database. And then once done, okay, in this case, I'm going to send the user back to the list of students. I don't want him to come back to add student view, right? He has already completed the action. Then we say here, return, redirect to action. And then we need to specify the action name, which is show students. That's it. Let's go and test, see what's going to happen. So refresh, let's type here, let's say, and then address. And as you see, this one I put by default, and I have already inserted the value 1 because inside my database I have one entry for faculty and the ID, corresponding ID is 1. This is why I put 1. Okay, so don't be confused saying why he has added one. I added one because inside my database, I already have records for faculties. If you like, I can show you, so at least you are able to follow. So if we go back to the Management Studio, so you see I got already one entry from my faculty. It's called FICT, and the ID is 1. This is why I have attached the ID of 1 inside my view. Okay, let's now test and see. Hopefully everything is just running smoothly. And voila, we got a problem saying for the ID. That means we didn't get the faculty ID. Let's just take a look. Okay, if we go back to add student, because here I put the input, you notice, first name. This is why, no wonder. Okay, so now after we have fixed, let's refresh the page or go back. Again, click add student. And great, I got my record inserted into the database. Okay, so you can add another student. Okay, so now you see that add action is working as perfectly as it is. Then we may add later another column to be able to show how we can do update and delete for those records or for any record we have.